everybody. Welcome to Class X with Kris. Real educators, real leaders, real talk. And you might notice that today our setup is a little bit different. I probably don't have to tell you why it's different. I can't be in person with our guest, but I am, ironically, I couldn't have asked for a better guest in this particular situation. He is so innovative. And I would like to introduce Tim Needles. He's an artist, he's a filmmaker, he's an author, and he's an educator. And while there are no A's in Tim Needles, he absolutely puts the A in STEAM, and he's a world-class advocate. So Tim, thank you so much for being my guest today, and I am truly disappointed that we aren't face-to-face like we were going to be at NAEA, but I appreciate you taking the time out today to be with me.
Of course, thank you for having me. And at some point, we do need to meet in person and actually do this live, yeah.
Oh, I know. I would be super excited for that. So before we talk about some of the amazing stuff that you do, take me back to just when you knew that you wanted to become a teacher, and give me a little start from the beginning on that.
Sure. I kind of knew early on. I had a teacher in first grade, Miss McKinstry, who, just showed me that I had an affinity towards art, before I was really totally aware of it. Because when you're young, kind of everyone does art, and everyone's drawing, but she took me aside one time and did a special project where we had to design some of the parts of a play. We were doing a play on Abe Lincoln, and she couldn't figure out how to make the hat. So, she took me aside and we worked on the design problem together. And that just it made an impact, and good teachers like that is really what made me want to become a teacher. Because certainly at that point, it was something that really made a big impact on me and my life, and really set me in a different direction, I think. So it's good teachers that make you want to become a teacher. That's the big thing.
That tends to be a common thread in these interviews, which is super cool. So that was elementary school. How did that build, and where did you go to college?
I went to School of Visual Arts, so in New York City. I didn't choose to go to art school right away. First, I went to a local university because I liked the idea of university, almost like, the same way you would like Hogwarts, but it didn't turn out to be the creative, fun environment that I was looking for. So then I decided to, take that risk and go to art school. And it felt like a risk, which is kind of funny. And that it's an important thing to remember, because I deal with students now, and, some of them are afraid to go and choose a career in the arts. Yeah. And, in reality, as a teacher, looking back on all my students, I realized, they tend to be happier, they tend to be more fulfilled with their jobs, and they have great jobs. So, it's not really the risk that people make it out to be. But in our society, it seemed like a risk. And art school was fantastic. I mean, I loved it. I lived in New York City, and when you get a chance to do that, art is everywhere, and all my professors were artists that were working. And I still keep in contact with some of them now, and some of them became well-known artists after I had them. So like Marilyn Minter and people like that, became big artists in the art world. And that's really interesting, because you get to see that experience, and it teaches you so much in addition to obviously the skills and things you would learn in any art school.
I liked looking at your website, and we will share all your website and your Instagram and those kinds of things. But I like looking at your website. I like that you are an artist and an art teacher. And it's interesting because all art teachers are artists, but not all artists are capable of being a teacher. And so it's that servant heart. And which brings me sort of to the next thing. How did you build on it? Like, it's interesting because you're talking about the Abe Lincoln hat, and you use the design process. And so most people they think of art and they think of creative. They don't always put it together with the design process. Tell me a little bit how you got into the whole STEAM part of it, and how you took STEM and made sure that the A was there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question because it happened organically. So for me, I just had an interest, and even in my own art, especially in my own art, I think I was exploring other topics. So like I was doing things on, political science or the sciences, or I was just curious. And I think it's that curiosity where kind of like the STEM meets the arts. And that's why I really make a big point in kind of with my students and activating their curiosity, like what are you interested in? Because that's how it happened for me. Just because, if you look at even well-known artists like Damien Hirst or something like that, a lot of the work is about the sciences and you're translating it through the arts. So it was happening organically, and I like playing. I mean, that's an important part of, being a creative person is just playing. So I loved using new ed tech and just, seeing what it does, like 3D printer, like, all right, what can we do that's interesting with this? Not just, what are the projects you could do, but like, how do you push the envelope and do something really creative? So I just liked playing with a lot of these tools. And I before that whole STEAM acronym became popular, I just realized that like I had an affinity for doing this because I was able to work with technology and art in pretty seamlessly, and the students really enjoy it. I really have fun doing it, and I like learning along with my students. So as a teacher, it's like I've been teaching for over 20 years. The last thing you want to do is do the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So I like to learn new things every year. So I always make a point to sort of just experiment and try something new and be very upfront with my students. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this, and, and neither do you, and we'll learn together, and that's okay. And it might fail and it might succeed, but we will learn. So for me, it was happening that way.
And what school do you teach at, and what grade level?
I teach high school, so I teach at Smith High School on Long Island, New York. It's a public school, and I teach a variety of classes, everything from like painting and AP art to digital media, which is, everything digital, like any kind of art you could do,
Yep.
and then filmmaking. We have I've been teaching film since I started, and a lot of students go into film and animation, so we have a nice history of that.
Yeah, very, very cool. You actually won an award. It's the ISTE Technology in Action Award and Creativity Award. How did that come about? How did they
That was just
recognize you?
lucky, I think. Yeah. I mean, yeah. The ISTE Creativity Award, it was the first year it was offered, I think, and I'm part of the ISTE Arts and Technology PLN. One of the things that I learned as an artist and teacher is I like collaborating with other people, so you want to find good people to work with. At my particular school, not all of the teachers in my department were collaborative, so I started looking to social media and other places. And I really enjoy collaborating with people from other places because you get to learn about their culture and ideas, and they just bring a different perspective. So, the ISTE Arts and Technology PLN is a place that I went to, and they offered this award. I got chosen for it, so that was pretty amazing. And then the other award was actually for creating videos that showcase some of what you're doing in the classroom and teach other teachers. So the Technology in Action Award is from, I was creating a lot of YouTube videos that kind of showcased, I figured like if I'm teaching, why just teach my students? Like why not just share it and put everything out there? So that was for some of those videos I was creating.
On that note, I'm going to go off my usual questions because I haven't had to ask the other teachers this question, which is, how are you doing during this social distance and distance learning kind of stuff?
It's really interesting. I mean, it's an opportunity, I think. So I've been doing pretty well because I'm comfortable with the technology, so that part wasn't that difficult. The hard part is that like one of the important things you do as a teacher is really connect with your students. So finding a way to connect with them and authentically without, forcing it is really the difficult part. And my school went pass fail for the fourth quarter. So it's super interesting to see what happens when students are not motivated by grades. So like there's no grades anymore, and it's like a laboratory in a sense. So I'm looking at it as like, well, this is the experience I've always wanted when you just take away the grades and it's all about learning. So like I've made all of my assignments, based on social emotional learning and creativity because it's just more interesting, more personal.
Yep.
and it's more effective. And I found that like if you put a normal type of assignment up, you just don't get the type of work. It's not all the students are actually activated and interested. But if it's a creative assignment that helps them personally, totally different story. You get a lot more interaction with students, and that's what really matters now.
So give me an example of one that has that social emotional learning part to it.
Well, we started off, one of the first assignments I gave is to actually just have a journal. And I said, like, any way you do this journal is up to you. If you want to use pictures, video, drawings, digital drawings, collage. But I want you to just show me what, for a week, show me what your life is like now and let me know how you feel. So, because it's based on art, they're focused on the art, but then they're also sharing and expressing themselves. And then after that, we kind of did some sort of mindful, fun drawing exercises. We did things like digital mandalas and
Cool.
creating stuff with. We did the Getty Challenge, which is a fun one that a lot of people have done, where you recreate a work of art at home with whatever you have.
Some of the NASCO art team did it too. It was fun. I keep trying to post at John Krasinski in hopes we'll feature art teachers on Some Good News.
Yeah, no, isn't that amazing? Like, Some Good News is one of those things that came out of this. That's terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just interesting because when I asked you that and you said, this is an opportunity, like what a positive way to take a look at this. And that certainly shows who you are. What advice would you give to an educator who wants to incorporate STEM or STEAM into their classroom?
I would say, like, well, what are you most curious about first? Like, because there's a lot of different technologies. And I like, to not focus so much on the technology, but focus on ideas, because technologies change. And, I never invest too much in any one technology. I like to play with a lot of different things. But like, so what are you interested in? Like, like I wanted to create an app in my classroom, and I saw a TED Talk where a 7-year-old was able to do it. I'm like, if a 7-year-old could do it, then me and a class of 20 kids could figure out a way to do this.
Sure.
So like whatever it is you're interested in, take that on and take it on with a partnership with the students. I mean, the most important thing if you are going to try a new technology and integrate, art and STEM together is really embracing failure and making it part of the process. It's part of the creative process failing. I mean, no one succeeds without failing a lot first. And remember that there's learning even when there's failure, so that's not a problem. And it doesn't need to succeed. You know what I mean? You could not get the product that you're looking for, but you could end up with a lot of great learning. So I mean, that's the first piece of advice I'd have. And the second one is that there's lots of resources and tools out there and people to help you. I mean, I'm on social media all the time, and I'm always open to people that want to experiment with the technology and like, what tool might I use? I want to do, some 3D printing with my classroom. Where's a good place to start? So, use the resources of other teachers, because, the nature of teachers is that we want to help other people. So, we're out there.
Yep. What about money? Do you think people should be concerned about money? Because obviously sometimes when you talk about 3D printers and things like that, there's definitely money involved.
That's a really good question. I don't think money is actually a big factor. You could do amazing things on a very low budget. And, one of the things that I was going to show at NAEA is like, 5 great STEAM tools on a low budget. So like things like cardboard are amazing. You know what I mean? Like it's about the creativity. It's not about the tools.
Right.
And there's lots of free tools out there too. I mean, if you want to do 3D printing, you can still do that even without a 3D printer. You know what I mean? You could use apps, and there's lots of free tools you could use to actually create 3D designs. And then, now like it's very easy. A lot of libraries have 3D printers, and you could send them work and use it. So you don't even need the tools necessarily. We're artists, and there's always a creative way to get through anything. So that's the important thing to remember.
Absolutely. So why do you think there are some that are super stuck on it being STEM and they don't want the A in there? What do you think is the reason for that?
That's a good question. I mean, like it's something I've pondered a lot, because I can't even tell you that even sometimes when they add the A, the A's not really there. I mean, there's no art. I can't tell you how many STEAM classes I took that just didn't treat art with respect. And I think, all right, so there's two problems. One of them is that a lot of education is formal, and because on a national level, they're not including the A. There's if you look at the national government, there's a lot of STEM things, but they don't ever use the word STEAM that I've ever seen. So I mean, that's one factor because it gets pushed down. And then another thing is that people there's a tendency for teachers to be a little bit siloed and not want things to change. I mean,
Sure.
this is an interesting point in education now because there's everything changed. Like everyone became a technology teacher, in March, whether they wanted to or not. So like everyone's using technology, and there's good experiences and bad experiences. But the world of education changed, no doubt. So integrating the arts has so many positives, and it just makes sense, especially when you consider art, beyond just fine arts, and you think of it as design and the big picture of what arts means. I think that there was some holdout, and I think some of it may be financial in terms of getting funding and things like that. But I think, there's people that are afraid of art. They don't have a real idea of what art is. And, one of my missions is really educating everyone I can get a hand of, and just make sure that they understand that art is more than just drawing. It's more than just, that traditional idea of what you think art is. Art is creative expression, and it means, many different things.
I liked the introduction of your book. It's called Steam Power. And I liked in the introduction that you talked about people fearing math. I definitely am a math fearer. But I also liked how you flipped it and said, it's no different than when somebody fears art. Yep, just like you can learn how not to fear math, you can learn how not to fear art too. And I just thought that is so perfect, because there are the people that will always say, I'm not creative, or I can't do that. And I only know that they can because I've experienced it. And so, I really, really love that. Tell me a little bit about that book, Steam Power, and how that came about.
Well, it came about because I was looking at the different resources available, and there was just the thing I was looking for didn't exist. So I decided, all right, well, let me just, so I started putting together my own resources, because I wanted something that kind of showed, the first part of the book focuses on the mindset and things that you would want to set up before actually teaching. And then the second part is all the different technologies and some of my favorite projects. I think I have 18 projects in there. And then the third part is how to elevate it with, connection and collaboration and other elements. So, I wanted like a one-stop shop for everything that someone would need if they wanted to really implement, STEAM in a meaningful way where you respected each one of those subjects. So I was really happy. I had done a presentation once or twice, and so I put all the elements together and pitched it as a book. And I had heard that getting a book published was really difficult, but for me it actually worked out really, really well. So it was pretty smooth, and it was a really good learning process, and sort of I got to collaborate with other people, and I loved working on the cover design and creating a 3D print for that. So
Yeah.
it was a learning experience itself that I tried to share.
That's fantastic. Very good. What is your go-to resource? Like where, when you want to do something new, or when you're gathering information to teach, where do you go?
For me, it's social media is the first place I'm going to go, because I have so many connections there, and so you don't want to start from scratch if you don't have to. So I always lean on the other colleagues that I have in different areas. So like there's someone that I know that has touched on something, and people are always willing to help, I find.
Right.
It's mostly pretty positive culture, and so I'll go to Twitter and Instagram and places and sort of talk to people. That's always my first and generally best resource.
Yep.
And then there's also like if you're trying to do stuff like STEAM, there's a couple of good resources out there. I mean, certainly ISTE has a lot of resources available, and you know, certainly now with this current crisis, there's just a plethora of resources that have become available. And there's places like Edutopia that are good at sort of putting together some of those resources for other people.
Sure. What's your biggest challenge in the classroom?
Probably my biggest challenge is still that resistance to, you know, what art is. I mean, like I'm particularly lucky in that I have a, you know, a reputation that precedes me, so it makes it a little bit easier, you know, because it's like, you know, I believe in kind of merging fun into all
Right.
of this art and teaching. So like, you know, students are way more interested to have fun and sort of enjoy themselves.
Yep.
But you know, you're always going to find people that are resistant, and it's like, you know, that's really my mission, is to kind of show them how art and creativity are there as a tool to help them in life. So I mean, like that's the constant struggle, because it's always there. And then also just the, you know, often parents or community members or even other administrators and teachers and things like that have a certain idea of what art is, or you know, it's very in a little box, and you want to make sure that you kind of help widen that and show that it could be way more than that.
So you talked about having fun. Tell me something really funny that has happened in your class.
Oh my goodness. We have a lot of fun. So I mean, like, you know, like every year, one of my favorite projects is, you know, at the beginning and the end of the year, there's all this extra cardboard. So I'll have the kids collaborate and we'll make, you know, these oversized masks of like famous artists. And, you know, so we'll work together and kind of make a, you know, like based on the artist Wayne White, who's one of my favorites. And so we'll put together like this parade of art figures and stuff like that. And, you know, I like to film this and share the process and the results. So that's always, you know, a fun part of the year, because like the kids are super creative, and like it's so much fun when you see everyone, you know, working together and excited and having fun together. That's always a great experience. But yeah, I mean, like even now, like that's one of the things in this current situation, that you want kids to still be able to collaborate and you know, see each other's work, you know. So like that's where you have to kind of be creative and work around the box. So like, you know, I'm using like Google Docs, and I'm just adding all the students to it, so it's like one area where we could all post things, and like, you know, we're using it almost as like a sounding board. But like, you know, right now we're doing video poems, which is one of the projects in my book. But kids are able to write their poems and then, you know, have everyone else critique it and edit it and look at some of their pictures. And we're using like just a Google Doc, which is easily available and, you know, free, at this sort of almost free social media site where we're, you know, it's no one else can come in, so it's safe.
Yep. Yep.
You know, that kind of thing is always fun.
Very cool. How about, because I will tell you, just in what I do, I often will hear how art impacted somebody's life. You know what I mean? And do you know of a circumstance where you know that you had an effect on a particular student?
Yeah, you know, these are the stories that make it worthwhile as a teacher. These kind of stories. I've had a couple of these situations, of course, having taught for so long. But I remember early on, you know, I had one or two students that were potentially failing out of school. I mean, like they were in danger of not graduating. But then you know, when I came across them, they had this huge creative skill. There was one kid, Eric Sibley, who, you know, was doing these videos in his backyard with like lightsabers for his math class. It was like, he redid Star Wars in his backyard. It was unbelievable. He had such talent, you know, in the creative side. So like when I was able to share that with the other teachers and like look at, you know, how strong he is in this side, you know, it changed the way that they saw him. And then they kind of began teaching everything through art, and it just, you know, it changes lives that way. So you know, like Eric was a student that was doing okay, and then started really excelling, and then, you know, he now works for Pixar and Lucasfilm. So like he was working on Star Wars and movies
So
like
it worked
that.
out pretty good for him.
Yeah, he went from Star Wars in his backyard to Star Wars on screen. So yeah.
That's outstanding. Very cool. How about, what do you wish people knew about art education?
Well, one of the things that I wish people knew is that in schools, it's often so siloed. So like you tend to be really independent. There's not many art teachers, and you don't get a chance to, work together with other teachers in the same way. And you're often like, if you're lucky, there's 3 art teachers in the building, but generally there's 1 or 2. So it's a little isolated, you know what I mean? And it's like, you want that social experience, and like, oftentimes it could be something that's forgotten in a school. So our teachers tend to often understandably have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and like, we matter too. So it's like, I mean, that's the important thing, because I'm taking classes in administration, and like I've had lots of, leadership roles. So you really want to consider everyone, and like the art teachers is one of those groups that can be forgotten. And like, we often have to make the most of what we can with the materials we have, or the situation we have, or you have art in a cart, and you don't have a home of your own. And so like, it's making sure that you show appreciation and understanding to everyone, and that's really important, I think.
I really like the part where you said, you had the student who was struggling and you talked with all the other teachers. Very impressed that they were also willing to collaborate with you. That kind of teamwork within a school is very impressive. So the way that I typically wrap up these interviews is with a series of questions. I completely stole the idea from James Lipton, the late James Lipton from Inside the Actors Studio. He had a list of really quick questions that he would answer, or that he would give the interview, and they would answer very quickly. So we're going to do it teacher style, because he occasionally asks people what their favorite swear word was, and we won't do that. We'll try to stay family friendly, because our teachers don't swear. We know that. So are you ready?
Sure.
All right. What's your favorite word?
Blue.
What's your least favorite word?
Ooze.
What's your biggest saving grace?
Coffee.
Very good. What sound drives you crazy in the classroom?
When students are eating while I'm talking.
Oh, yes. What profession would you try if you couldn't be a teacher?
Astronaut.
Wow. Best gift ever from a student?
Artwork.
Nice. One thing you wish administrators would consider in the classroom?
More collaboration.
And favorite thing about teaching?
Oh, connection.
Fantastic. Tim, thank you. I knew that I was going to totally enjoy this, and I feel like we could probably talk for hours. I'm always so proud to be part of the community of educators. Like, sometimes I forget what I do for a living, because I feel like I just want to be one of you guys. You're for sure a real deal, and you are definitely a class act. If anybody has questions for Tim Needles or wants to know more about class acts, please comment or email at info@nascoeducation.com. We are going to also post Tim's social media accounts and his website. We're going to share his book with you. Tim, thank you so much. This is the part where I would shake your hand. And so I'll just give you a virtual high five and just say thank you so, so much.